Yes, we are. We're good. Good evening. Welcome to the Danvers Conservation Commission for April the 8th, 2021. We operate under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Chapter 26 of the Town of Danvers General Bylaw, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. After each applicant has presented his or her request and the board has had time to ask questions and discuss, we will accept questions from the audience. Because this is a public meeting, it is required by law that you give your name and address first. Although we may disagree on the issues raised, all persons present during this meeting are expected to be civil to all other meeting attendees. This includes the members of the commission, staff, abutters, concerned citizens, property owners, and project applicants. Finally, we also request that you confine your questions to the project and only as it pertains to the Wetlands Act. We cannot handle, nor do we have jurisdiction regarding such things as noise or traffic. All problems not related to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Danvers Wetlands Protection Bylaw must be taken up with the other appropriate. Moving on, I'm going to call a roll call of the members of the board. Michael Splain.
Here.
Ann McGill.
Here.
Chelsea King.
Here.
Vanessa Curran.
Here.
Peter Wilson. Here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond. Georgia Pendergast. She's here. She will. David Fields.
Present.
Alicia Linehan.
Present.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond. Bill Manuel.
I am here.
For the Danvers Dog Park, Steve King and Martha Duffield.
Steve King is here.
Martha Duffield's here.
Okay, thank you. Just an introduction to our remote meeting. Good evening. This meeting of the Danvers Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gathering. As such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical locations. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so as long as reasonable public access is afforded, the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Danvers Conservation Commission is convening remotely via the Teams app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. These broadcasts can be captured by the recording. Meeting materials. Supporting materials that have been provided members of this body and will be shown during this transmission. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. The meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the rules and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your microphone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that brings that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Moving to our first item is public hearing for the notice of intent for 11 Jersey Lane, DEP file number 14-1364. The applicant is Kathy Gardner, and I believe your representative is Bill Manuel.
It is. Good evening, commission members. This is Bill Manuel from Wetlands and Land Management here in Danvers. And I know Kathy Gardner and her mom, Pauline Lina, are on the Zoom or the meeting, and will be available to answer any questions if needed. This is an application I'm very happy to bring to the commission. We've worked with Kathy and Pauline over the last several months, and they've been great clients. They've listened very carefully to the counsel given by myself, their architect, and the engineer, Bob Griffin. There are some regulatory constraints on this property, but they listened very carefully and were accepting of that. And we've come to you with a plan that is a tremendous improvement on the site. It will give Kathy and her husband and her mom, Pauline, a new place to live. And it will, from a commission standpoint, it removes over 2,000 square feet of impervious area in the initial 100 feet from the river, and overall ends up with a net reduction of about 370 square feet of impervious area on the site. So I would like to share my screen. Okay. Let's see. Georgia, do I have to do something different to share my screen?
No, so it looks like we do see your screen. But we're seeing what you see. So I'm seeing myself right now.
Okay.
So you're gonna want to, when you hit share, it's gonna ask you which application or screen you want to share, and I would pick PDF or whichever one you have the plan open on.
Let's try this again.
Yeah.
Desktop. Okay, now there you go. Can everybody see that plan?
Not yet.
Okay.
Bill, you can also, whichever one you were just in that was working, you can do that and then open the plan from there. That may work too.
How about that?
Hey, look at that.
Yes.
Success?
Yes.
Perfect.
I don't see, oh, there it is, okay.
All right. So Jersey Lane is here. It's actually, it extends here out to Liberty Street and then makes a hard bend. There's another house here. There's a home over here. And this is a wooded paper street in a wooded area here. This is a tidal creek to the tributary to the Porter River. The existing house is right here. There is a patio and a small shed in this location. There's an existing garage that will be saved. The driveway enters from Jersey Lane and goes all the way down the side of the property line. And there's a large parking area here. And then you walk into the current house. So the resource areas on the site include bordering vegetated wetland, which is flagged beginning from Jersey Lane. It kind of comes down along the side of the property line, and then it meets this tidal tributary, and it becomes the edge of Saltmarsh. And so you can see the grading is very distinct. It's right along the bank of that tidal tributary. This is an old concrete boat ramp that previous owners had put in. And then the line eventually just trails off the property line here. So Saltmarsh and BVW. The entire site is encumbered by land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's elevation 13 in this area, and that would cover the entire property. This is a perennial tidal creek, so there is riverfront area on the site. This line here is the 100-foot inner riparian zone. And then this dashed line here is the outer limit of the riverfront area. The 50-foot no build line is this green line that goes through the project just like this. And you can see that the new structure is completely out of the no build zone. We don't have any work in the no disturbance zone either. Other than removing some of these structures here. But so I don't need any waivers for the new construction at all. So you can see the property is, it's basically maintained lawn from the street line all the way right down to the river's edge. So it's wide open grass. It's relatively flat, not relatively, it's pretty darn flat from front to back. This is the existing home that will be ultimately demolished at the end of the project. Kathy and her husband may choose to preserve the home while construction is ongoing and live in it. It all depends on what the cost is to reroute this sewer line around right now it goes right through the building site. So they'd have to reroute that. If that cost is excessive, well, then they're not going to go through that expense. And they will just probably demo the home right at the beginning of the project. Here's the new home. The new driveway is here. The limit of pavement for the new home stops right here. So all this area that I've outlined in black is existing pavement that will be taken up and restored to grass. This patio and shed will be removed. Of course, the house is gone. This small gardening shed up here will be removed as well. So overall, there is a removal of 2,727 square feet of impervious area in this inner riparian zone here. And the house is now moved out of the inner riparian zone. You can see here's the front yard zoning setback line right here, this dashed line. And the house is pushed as far away, right up to that front yard setback line. It is as far away from the river as it can be on this site. It will be elevated above elevation 13, and it will have flood vents in the foundation to allow stormwater to flow in and out during extreme tidal events. The entire riverfront area impact is 4,971-ish, I think. So we are compliant with the riverfront impact thresholds. I think we've done a great job here. We've pushed it as far away as we can. I give a lot of credit to Kathy and Pauline because they listened intently and they took good guidance. And between the engineer, the architect, and the clients, they've done a wonderful job here. So we do have a file number. It's 14-1364. The DEP had no comments. I did have a visit with Georgia on Tuesday, I think. On the site, we talked about, do we need all this grass area here? And Kathy is an enthusiastic gardener and has volunteered, or she can discuss or chime in, but she thought that she would augment this lawn area with some additional vegetation to create sort of a buffer here that could be sort of an order of conditions, if you will. And they're also open to just closing off this concrete, this bituminous concrete boat launch. It's in a deteriorated state. Nobody uses it. Frankly, the only time you can use it is perhaps an hour or two at high tide, and then you're going to have to get back up this tributary, or you'll be dragging your kayak through the mud. So they're amenable to closing that off as well, which could also be an order of conditions. So it's a tremendous project. DEP has no comments. We've reduced impervious area on the site and pulled everything as far away from the river as possible.
Okay, good. Thank you, Bill. One quick question. You mentioned something about a garage that was going to stay. Where is that?
Yes, this garage right here, this building right here.
Also, it's a totally separate building.
Yep.
And what's the reasoning for leaving that there so far away from everything else?
Well, because there's a lot of stuff in that building. The house is elevated. It doesn't have any basement space, so there's a
Right.
lot of stuff in that building.
Okay, just curious. Okay, I'm going to pass it along to the other members to answer questions, and if there's anything left at the end, I will chime in. Let me start with Chelsea. Do you have any questions, Chelsea? Comments?
No real questions. I think this is a really good project. You're removing a lot of impervious. Just curious, like, do you have a plan for like any plantings that are going to go into the space that's going to be cleared up, or is it all just going to be lawn?
Hi, this is Kathy Gardner, 11 Jersey Lane. I am totally open to reducing some of the existing lawn in that back area. I have done some research on native species to this area. I was thinking maybe, winter berries, birch trees, maybe some elderberries. I have a few other things that I have written down, just not on the top of my head. But I am totally open to naturalizing that back area, basically so we don't have to mow.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly what I want to hear. That's fantastic.
Okay,
I don't know if we want to make it like a condition, since you're already, it sounds like you already have like a plan to do it on your own. I don't think we have to personally, but
Hey,
I'll leave that up to the other members. Besides
Yeah.
that, I have nothing to comment on.
I mean, my general plan would be, kind of doing it slowly over several years. But yeah, that would be my intent, to naturalize that area.
Okay, you all set then, Chelsea?
Yep, I'm all set. That sounds very
Okay.
cool.
Ann, any questions, comments?
I think a great idea to use a prefab house, the least amount of disturbance in the area. One question I had was about the roll-off containers for debris. Will they be there simultaneously as the project is going on, or is this a back and forth thing as the house is demolished each day?
And this is Bill, and there generally is a container on site from start to finish.
Okay. So it's not a whole bunch of rolling in and rolling out.
Obviously, when the house demo was going on, they're going to probably fill up several containers.
Right.
So that will be, trading them in and out probably on a daily basis. But once construction starts, and especially with the use of the prefab homes, thank you for bringing that up because I forgot to mention it. The home will be pre-constructed off-site and arrive in basically large boxes that'll be lifted off a trailer and dropped onto the foundation. That reduces construction waste considerably. And so, but nevertheless, you still need a container on site for any refuse that's generated during the construction, and it should be there start to finish.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bill.
All set then, Ann?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Michael?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Bill, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Bill, could you talk about that? I think you called it a ramp down at the end of the property that the previous owners had. What is that now?
This is a paved, I assume it was a boat launch.
Oh, so it just sort of slopes down into the water?
Yep. Yep, that's exactly right. The only time it's
don't-
functional would be at really extreme high, at high tide and maybe an hour before, hour after. But
Yeah.
once the tide goes out up this tributary, the water drops fairly fast.
And you thought the owner would be amenable to removing that? Would that make sense to remove that?
Kathy and Pauline, you want to chime in?
Hi, this is Kathy again. We are totally open to removing that. We don't use it. And, the only reason we haven't would just be a cost, but we are definitely open to having that removed.
So is it paved right now? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
County,
So-
it's partially paved, and if you remove it, you're gonna have mud.
Well,
I was about to say, would it create a problem by removing it, the act of removing it? Bill, can you respond to that?
Well, the bottom of this ramp is already deteriorated and broken off. It's already kind of, so at low tide, you do have mud flats anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
the fact that, you got mud on the flats, you may have, in the intertidal zone, you probably will still have mud.
Yeah.
And
All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's okay. My only concern if we do remove it would be erosion with the tide coming and going up, through it every day. How much erosion would that cause?
Well, what happens on either side of it? What's on either side of it? Is there a retaining wall?
There's higher banks.
Right.
So that bank was cut out to make the ramp probably, so you
Yeah.
mean it would have to be restored to a higher bank? Is that right, Bill? Or would it just,
Yeah, that would be, you can sort of fill in that area and you restore it. You would
Yeah.
probably need to stabilize the slope with an erosion blanket.
hey, Bill, can we talk about the foundation? Only because I'm trying to learn some information here. You talked about the way the foundation is to allow water to pass through, is that correct?
That's correct. It
So-
will have flood vents, they call them.
Yeah, so does that mean they can't put stuff in their basement or there is no basement?
There is no basement. There is generally there's a concrete slab under the house so that it's easy enough for water to flow in and water to flow
Right.
back out.
So that brings my next concern. So it's anticipated that water could feasibly flood the area. So what about, I'm concerned about using pesticides if there's water is going to be washing in and out on there.
Well, it says no storage of chemicals or fertilizer, pesticides would be allowed under the dwelling.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that. Otherwise, I think the project's good. It is a prefab, so there's less on-site construction. The other thing, the building that is staying, is there going to be drive access to that?
We talked about that with Georgia. It's okay that they drive over the grass to get to there.
Oh, okay.
Kathy, tell me
All
this
right.
garage.
What else? Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Vanessa, any questions?
Just a couple things. So I agree with what Mike said about not storing any chemicals or pesticides under the house, but I would also like to add the garage down by the boat ramp that's gonna stay to because it seems like that's been in water before. The water's gotten to the corner of the house, and I would assume that that garage has been.
The storm that the water made it to the house, that shed flooded about 2 inches and it receded within 20 minutes. And I am a huge organic gardener and a big organic proponent. So the lifetime that I live in this dwelling, you're not going to find any chemicals or pesticides stored there.
Okay.
Tell them it's not a garage, it's a shed.
And it's a shed, not a garage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I really like the idea of the putting in the native plantings along the shoreline, and I wouldn't mind seeing it as a condition that not to mow down to the shoreline, just for just so it's in writing. I wouldn't mind seeing that as a condition.
That's fine.
Otherwise,
There's actually, Vanessa,
yep.
it doesn't, the lawn doesn't go directly to the shore. There's actually a vegetated buffer. You could see the scalloped line here. But nevertheless, Kathy is willing to, landscape this area here over time as well.
Okay, so what's the existing and what's the proposed in that area?
This red scalloped line is something that I edited tonight for presentation, which was basically to indicate that Kathy was willing to do some sacrifice the lawn here and put in some native shrubs. And you heard her say that, it's something that she'd like to do over time. Take several years and, figure out what works best, or just, as her time and budget allows.
Okay, and then what is there presently for existing vegetation?
A bunch of Phragmites.
Okay,
Yeah, along this banking, it's a bunch of frag down to the mud flat.
There's also a little bit of sea lavender mixed in there, and there's another. I apologize. I didn't have my list with me. I wasn't prepared. I could submit something. There is a substantial amount of a plant material that I was able to identify, but I just don't have it handy. I would be happy to submit that, though.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of frag.
Yeah, there's another. It almost looks like a blueberry bush, but it's not. And then as I was researching the native species with the Audubon Society, I identified it. So I could submit what is currently there for a native species shrub.
Yeah, I think you were looking at marsh elder.
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, very similar to that. It's very similar structure to like a low blueberry.
Mm-hmm.
All set, Vanessa?
yep.
Bill, just a quick follow-up, just to clear up a misunderstanding in my mind. That area that you have highlighted in red,
Yes.
that they're proposing to improve, what is that? Is that lawn right now, or is that Phragmites right now?
No, that is open lawn.
So it is lawn. Okay, so they want to go through and cut all that. Okay, the next question I have is, where is your proposed parking for the new house?
It'll be the drive. Here's the garage. The driveway is here, and
Oh,
the
so it's all in
limit
front
of
of it.
new pavement is right here.
Okay,
So there'll be basically one car can pull in here, and two in the garage or two stacked outside of it.
okay. Now all of the asphalt that they're going to remove, that's all being taken away off-site. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Okay, and then I think the demolition is going to be a fairly extensive endeavor here. So are there plans in here for erosion control for that? Because a lot of that is well within the 50 and 25 buffers.
Yeah, the yellow line here, Peter, is our limit of erosion controls.
Okay, good.
And, the demo is basically what they do is they take out any of the glass, they remove the glass, all the mechanicals come out, everything gets sort of stripped before they start knocking it in. And then it's just that basically they have a machine and knock it inward and make a big pile and just load it out.
Okay, and is there a cellar hole there now?
There is a cellar. Yep. It's kind of like a half cellar. You have to hunch down when you go downstairs.
And what's the plans for that?
Well, it gets filled in obviously with clean earth. And then this area, part of it will be a patio. You can see the pervious patio here.
Yeah.
So part of the house will end up being patio and the rest of it will be grass.
And the foundation will stay in the ground, or is it removed?
No, that all comes out.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have for questions. Anyone else on the board want any follow-up questions? Oh, okay, let's open it up to the public. George, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Are we just asking through the Teams format for any public input?
Yes, I believe Mr. Duggan is here, and I also believe with Pauline and Kathy, the neighbor, is present, and I'll offer them an opportunity to speak since they can't exactly raise their hand here in the meeting.
Okay, so we don't have to go to email or just phone, though. It's all just through the Teams. Okay, perfect. So if there's anyone from the public that would like to ask a question or make a comment, please let us know that you would like to do that.
Yeah, Pete Clement, 9 Jersey Lane, direct abutter. I think this is a wonderful project. I don't think should have any problems with it at all.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
Hold on.
And I'm Janice Clement from 9 Jersey Lane, and I'm all for the project also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good fit for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yep.
Seeing none,
Yep. Here.
I'm
Right.
sorry.
Matthew Duggan.
Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matthew Duggan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Just a couple of quick questions here. For the first one is, how long has the applicant resided at this address?
Since
2012.
2012.
Okay. So the next question is also for the applicant through you, Mr. Chairman. I just, on the map here, above the project and adjacent to it where it says proposed street there on the north side where the green majority of the green line is, do we know who owns that property?
Danvers Point Yacht Club.
The yacht club, yeah. Okay, and do they use that? Do they go in there, do you know, to
No, it's woods, and there's a very small pond in there.
okay, so they own it, but they don't like park any boats in there or anything like that?
No, it's all wooded.
Yeah, okay, that's good to hear. And then just one last question. Early on in the presentation, there was a mention of the sewer line, a sewer easement. Is that illustrated on this plan?
Yeah, I mentioned, this is Bill Manuel, and I mentioned that they may temporarily, they may put a temporary sewer line in, and it's shown right here with my cursor, that just diverts it around the structure, because presently, right now, it goes right through here and connects the house. So if it's not expensive and it's not a waste of money, because obviously whatever they do is just going to be disconnected after the house is done, they will do it. If it turns out to be too expensive, they just won't do it and they won't live in the house.
Okay, that's fine. So initially I was thinking it was part of the Essex Sewer District, because I know there's some lines that go to Salem, maybe not right in this area, but in nearby areas off or traversing Liberty Street. I know there's some sewer lines, so that's what I thought may have been was being referred to. So doesn't sound it. So I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you're welcome. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak? George, I have to rely on you because I don't see anything when people are raising their hands. Okay, I think we ought to proceed with issuing an order of conditions. So if someone would like to make a motion to that effect or to something different, either.
Do we have to close the public hearing first?
Yes. Okay, before we do that, then let's, if we're all done with speakers, let's close the hearing. So if someone can make a motion.
I make a motion that we close the hearing for 11 Jersey Lane, 14-1364.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second,
I'll second.
All in favor? Vanessa,
yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
and Peter. Yes. Okay, now I'd entertain a motion that we issue an order of conditions.
I'll make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for 11 Jersey Lane, DEP file number 14-1364, with the usual conditions, and in addition to the usual conditions, that the boat ramp, that is deteriorated boat ramp, be removed and the bank be restored in that area, that there be no pesticides used in the dangerous chemicals in the basement area of the new house, that there be no pesticides stored, the dangerous chemicals at floor level in the, I think it's called a shed. Is it a shed, Bill, or a garage?
It is a shed.
In the shed. And that appropriate erosion controls be used in the demolition of the existing house. And that's the motion.
Okay, thanks. Vanessa, was there another condition that you had mentioned, or did Mike cover it?
I think I had kind of mentioned about not mowing when you get down close to the bank. Because I think that the area that looks like it's going to be getting restored is lawn now.
Okay, let's add that too then, Mike.
I'll add that into the motion, that the area, well, the area that's currently lawn will be restored to native plantings to the best of the applicant's ability, in accordance with staff.
That sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah.
All right, good.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Yeah, all in favor? Vanessa?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
And Peter? Yes. Okay, just a word to the applicants. There's a 3-year limit on order of conditions, and we strongly encourage you to come back for a certificate of compliance within that time frame, and to deviate minimally from the plans that you have shown us here tonight. So it makes it easier when we would like to issue an order of certificate of confirmation. Okay, that being said, good luck.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
You're
bye, Bill.
welcome. Okay, next up, a notice of intent for 21 Ingersoll Street, DEP file number 14-1363. The applicant is the town of Danvers, and I believe Steve King is here to present.
Hi, yes. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission Board. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Steve.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stephen King, Town Engineer for the Engineering Division on Danvers. I'll be presenting modifications for the dog park along with Martha Duffield, who also is representing the Engineering Division. I'd like to give a brief introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to Martha to give a little bit more of the details on the modifications and improvements we'd like to make at the dog park. So if you're not familiar with the area, it's really off of Forest Street, the entrance to the dog park. It's one of the benefits of living in Danvers, having this asset. We originally constructed it back in 2015, 2016, with the use of the Staten Foundation, which was a grant that was awarded to the Recreation Department in order to construct the dog park. Once the construction was actually complete, we weren't able to finalize all the improvements that we wanted to at that point. But one of the biggest issues that we saw was the location of the dog park didn't really allow for the best use of it for the type of dogs, the large dogs and the small dogs. It's basically cut in from a steep slope from east to west. And we found that slope caused a lot of migrations of the pea stone and gravel, detract from the higher elevation to the lower elevation after rain events. And we've also seen that some of the edging that was put in also has been harmful to some of the dogs. So speaking with some of the people who use it frequently, we took in their information, their comments. We actually went back to the Staten Foundation, requested additional funding through their capital improvements program and also through town meeting warrant. And we were able to secure enough funds to provide an in-house design for the dog park modifications and we're looking to do the constructions in-house, most of the construction in-house with our street and highway division, and we'll subcontract some of the other work with other general contractors. So most of this work that Martha will show you is all within pretty much the 100-foot buffer, the 50-foot no disturb zone, the 35 no disturb zone, and the 50-foot no build zone. We're trying to make small adjustments. We're kind of reshifting the orientation of the dog park to take out the steep slope within it and level out the area a little bit, so we won't get the migrations of stones, and we can actually add in a little bit more shade for both the dog owners and the dogs who are there to enjoy the town's asset. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Martha to kind of walk you through the plans and some of the changes and modifications we would like to make at the dog park.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to share my screen. So can you all see my screen?
I see it.
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, so kind of here, this line that I'm tracing is the existing fence line. Our objective is to keep this outer fence completely intact. There are wetlands all around the entire project, so Georgia had asked us to re-flag, so we did that actually this past month. So these flags here, the ones down here, and the ones here and back here were all just recently done. And so these are the 35 and the 50-foot buffers. I highlighted in pink the impervious changes in the buffer, and I highlighted in brown the erosion control, and in blue this will be the proposed utility work to move the existing water lines that are here to connect to the ones that are already here. And then this black line will be that retaining wall that will separate the low zone from the high zone. So these fences are illustrated for you to see that the park will be open with a temporary large and a temporary small area during parts of the construction. But at the end, these two fences will be removed, and the only fence separating interior will be along this retaining wall. And then, as Steve mentioned, we're going to be adding some shade trees. So here are the trees that we're hoping will add shade to both the large and the dog park size. We went through all the calculations, and for the alterations in the 0 to 35-foot buffer and the 0 to 50-foot buffer, and we were below the maximum for both of them, as you can see up here. So for the 0 to 35, we had a maximum of 837 square feet of impact, and we're only impacting 136 feet. And then for the 0 to 50-foot buffer, it's 2,424, and we're only impacting 1,000. So we really wanted to provide some ADA accessibility for the park, and we try to minimize in the buffer how much would be affected, but since there's wetlands on all four sides, this really was the best location to kind of minimize how much would actually be in the buffer. This is an existing walkway right here that's currently like gravel. We will top that with stone dust. Again, we might have to like reset some of it if the trucking creates problems, but we're hoping we can just top dress it. And then this gravel right here will be new, because this current access, this light gray current access for trucks into the large dog park will be moved over to this side. I think that's all the main things. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, we do. How much fill do they have to bring in to bring that up to flatten out the grade?
I don't think they should have to bring in much at all, because I feel like the cuts here will supplement. We didn't do a specific cut and fill analysis, but I think it's actually pretty close.
Okay, good. Okay, let me pass it along to the members, and then we'll see if there's anything left at the end. Okay, first I would ask Chelsea if she has any questions, comments.
Yeah, a couple. What is the blue outline there again?
This is just the water line. So currently this gray line right here is the water line coming in, and there's actually like a water fountain here that it connects to, and then it connects to the rest of these spigots. And because we'll be cutting into the grade, we'll likely run into the existing water line. And so we're just pulling it out so that we don't have to go underneath the retaining wall in order to connect back over here. We're just gonna slide it around on the outside.
I see. Is the entrance gateway moving too, or no?
So for right here, this is all staying the same. So this existing large access way stays, and then this bullpen is staying. This will be, as opposed, right now there's like large and small in the same spot, but we'll actually just have this whole thing be for just the small dogs with just the one gate. And then we're putting the second bullpen kind of where the existing access gate is over here.
I see. Okay. That's all I was wondering. Yeah, I live up the road from this, so I go there a lot. And it seems like a cool project. I appreciate the addition of trees, because right now that is my one criticism of the dog park, is that it is kind of like just an open space. So that'll be cool. That's all I've got. I'll hand it over.
Okay, thanks. Ann, any questions?
Yes, the concern that you have with the rain and washing away the pebbles, how is that being corrected with this new foundation here, or the new surface?
So right now, the elevation up here is like 73, 74, and all the way down here it's like 68. And so what we're doing is we'll be adding about a 3-foot retaining wall here. And so this will all be the lower elevation, around like 68, 69. And then this walkway will be closer to 72. So you're only looking at a 2-foot difference here instead of the 5-foot difference that it was.
Okay.
Now there will be some steeper grading on this side of the walkway, but I don't really anticipate that to be an issue since you're not getting all the migration from the whole park.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Michael, any questions?
Yes, just a couple. First, this is going to be handicap accessible?
The concrete pads will be ADA compliant.
And where will they be?
So for the small dog park, we're going to have a concrete pad. So there'll be a brick entrance for the Friends of the Dog Park contribution. And then for the large dog park, there'll be a walkway.
Okay, I think I asked this before. So if someone was to come in handicap, how would they get to the park? How would they get to the dog park?
Well, there's a handicap parking spot over here that they can park in, and then there is a gravel entrance. We want to stone top it with some stone dust just to make it a finer material for people who would maybe be in a wheelchair or have some more access challenges to be able to get it smoother, because right now the rocks are kind of like a little bit big.
Yeah,
so
that would be.
So that's the plan.
And there's what, one space?
Yes, one space here.
And could you explain the function of the bullpens?
Why you need 2 gates?
No, well,
Yes.
what do the bullpen? Yeah, what do they do? The bullpens.
So basically, because like the dogs could escape when a new dog comes in, is they put 2 gates. Here, I'll kind of show you on this one. So like, let's say you're someone who's coming in, you come in, you go in this gate. All the other dogs that are excited and want to see your dog, they stand that gate. Then you shut this. So when you enter here, if the dogs come in here, they don't escape.
I see, that makes sense. And what's the rationale for separating the dogs, the small dogs and big dogs? Is it because the big dogs could injure the small dogs, or is there another reason?
Yeah, they don't always play as easily with each other. You know, I find it's pretty beneficial. Like when I go to the dog park, you know, sometimes the little dogs are just, they can get intimidated and then like get snappy. I mean, sometimes they run the show too. So it's just, you have to know your dog, but having that option is really helpful.
Okay, that's all I have, I think. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Vanessa, any questions or comments?
I just have a question about what species of trees are you putting in that shade tree area?
I don't remember. I think, I mean, I don't know. I think it was going to go in accordance with the planning board. I think they suggest like a maple. So I was just going to go by what like site plan has.
Okay. And then is there any concern with those trees being so close to the retaining wall with the roots growing into the retaining wall?
I would ask Steve King that question.
Hi, yeah, this is Steve King. Yeah, depending on the maples, or we may have to opt out of using a different type of tree that has a lesser root ball that might not be so expansive that it could possibly get into pushing out the retaining wall that we're building. It is going to be a rock retaining wall, so it's very loose. So it's definitely something that we're going to have to take into effect of what specific trees we can plant in that area. And we'll work with Georgia and David on that specific species in our forestry department as well. Something that's easily maintainable but not going to cause a lot of damage with the root system.
I just realized too that the trees that are to the left are going to be between the water line and then the retaining wall. So I like the idea of the addition of the trees. I'm not sure about the area for it. Just, it seems like there's some underground constraints there for the roots, but I'm sure I don't think there's a place on here that we'd say, oh no, don't put a tree there. So I'm sure you'll figure out the best place to put them in.
And it might be spacing as well, that we may have to reduce the number of trees, but I think there's absolutely no, sun protection at the park right now. So we're trying to put something in as close as we can to what was originally designed. I mean, they were supposed to follow the old fence line that separates the existing dog park it is today with trees and shrubs, and that was never installed due to lack of funding. So at this point, we're trying to put in some shade protection. Eventually, maybe put in some other shade areas as we can hopefully expand the dog park and make it a completely uniform, ADA accessible spot for people to bring the dogs to.
Yeah, and I see, it makes sense that you're trying to have the benefit of the shade be to both areas, and so by putting them in between the two. But I think that's just something that might be making sure the roots aren't gonna destroy your retaining wall, or that the trees can't properly grow.
Well, and the other thing too is we do have some flexibility because this timber edging, it's not like we're super, if we find that the root balls for the trees that we're looking at need an extra foot or two, we can modify the design in order to accommodate that. So I think that's one of the nice things about being your own engineer is you can kind of work with what's there and make a modification if it's necessary.
Okay. I think that's all I've got. Otherwise, it looks like
Okay, I think we trust you guys to make the right decisions on the trees. Any idea what your timing is?
Yeah, so we actually are ready to move forward whenever you guys are ready. We're getting quotes right now. We have a surveyor ready to help stake out the grading, and then per the Stanton Foundation grant, is they need everything to be done by September. So mid-September, we would like the entire project done. Hey, sweetie.
Okay, so will the park have to close during construction?
So our plan is to, when the contractor comes in and does the project, the first grading and excavating, to close down the park for 2 weeks and really have them focus, on the inside and getting it set up. Then we plan to go through and put this temporary fencing in so that as they work on the retaining wall and we put in the concrete pads and we relocate the benches and, those other smaller items, people can still get use out of the dog park at that time.
Okay.
There will be, I just want to bring it up so if people are asking, because I was talking with Chris Sanborn about it. We have not decided if we're going to have water on site during the project for the summer. So we're going to try to make sure that there is some water for the users to have, but it might not be, they might not.
Okay, yeah, maybe just publicize that. Okay, good, thank you. If no one else from the board has any other questions or comments, let's open it to the public to see if anyone has any questions.
Any hands?
Okay, seeing none, if someone can make a motion that we close the public hearing, please.
I'll move that we close the public hearing for dog park improvement 14-1363, Town of Danvers.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor? Vanessa?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And Peter? Yes. Okay, next up, so the motion has been closed, and now if someone will make a motion that we issue an order of conditions?
Mr. Chairman?
It's a waiver.
Mr. Chairman, isn't there a request for waivers in this matter?
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry. Didn't see it on the, so we need waivers to operate both within the 25 and the 50, right? The 35 and 50.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So before we proceed, could I just ask Georgia? So Georgia, we know what waivers are being requested, and then is this again a situation where they have to present alternatives?
Yes, so as Martha had noted in the notice of intent, she briefly listed based on the constraints of having wetlands on all four sides.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Let me get the memo. Yeah, so the requirements for the 35 was to list the alternatives and then provide the buffer calculations, which she did. But Mike, what you are also hinting at is the riverfront area requirements, in which we have a full-blown alternatives analysis. In that case, it's not that.
Not applicable here.
No.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up and answering my question. Well, so I guess if you want, I'll make a motion that we grant the waivers from the 35 no disturb and the 50 no build to allow this project to go forward. If we could address that first before we vote on the motion.
That's right. Okay, do we want to further discuss? Mike, since you started, you can go first.
I have no further discussion. I'm satisfied.
Okay, is anyone else? Otherwise, we'll proceed right to voting.
No, I don't have.
Okay. All right, so if someone can make a motion that we're going to grant a waiver request to operate within the 35 and 50-foot boundaries.
Didn't Mike make that motion already?
Yeah, I made that motion already.
Right.
And we just had no discussion on it, so
I'm
the
sorry.
motion, that's all right.
Confused here. All right, so motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Vanessa?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Peter? Yes. Okay, now we can vote on an order of conditions. If someone's willing to make a motion?
Right now.
What's our order?
Go ahead. All right, I'll make a motion. We issue an order of conditions for the Town of Danvers Dog Park Improvement Application 14-1363 with the condition that the plantings that were proposed by the applicant, that care be taken that the they consult with staff so as to have proper plannings that won't disturb the wall, the retaining wall that was referred to.
Okay.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, all in favor. Vanessa,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yep.
Ann,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Peter, yes. Okay, you're good to go, Steve.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right.
Very
Next time
good.
I get a dog.
Thank you.
Next is a public hearing, the Town of Danvers Wetlands Bylaw Regulations changes, proposed changes to the wetlands regulations associated with Chapter 26, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. George, I'm going to put you on the spot and let you summarize what we discussed a few weeks ago, and then we can move along and hopefully approve these.
Happy to. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Just a second here. Everyone. Oh, that's big. Everyone can see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
It's
So
what we have. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is what the board has in their memo, and for the public, I just want to zoom out quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the 6 changes that the board discussed last meeting based on the recently adopted regulations. So there are a couple things that need to be changed. Some what we refer to as Scribner's errors, or maybe a little bit more than that. So the first 4 we have pertain to the 35 and the 50-foot restrictive buffer zones. The existing regulations right now, the way it's written, it's quite confusing. It took David and I quite a few times, as well as Bill Manuel and a few consultants, to realize what I was trying to say. And we also realized just a quick language change made everything a lot easier. So really the issue was the fact that the words up gradient of the no disturb zone were included in the definition of the 50-foot no build. So by taking that out, it's much more defined. And again, we do the same thing down here, in which our calculations are based off the whole entirety of the 0 to 50. So we want to clarify that. Again, replacing no disturb with no build zone. And then one of the big changes is adding a new section. So that's going to be section 5.3.1.4, and that's going to be under waiver requirements. So if someone is altering in the 35 or the 50, they're going to open up the regulations. They're going to say, okay, what are my requirements if I'm requesting a waiver? Right now, we have quite a few about what they need to provide, calculations, square footage, and they need to show quite a few things on the plan. Dave and I have had discussions, and based on previous applications we've gotten, I mean, the commission is very good about asking applicants kind of about the construction process, how vehicles come in and where things are stored. In this new section right here, we're proposing that applicants actually show that limit of temporary alteration on the plan. So if you're putting a 10 by 10 addition on, yes, your impact is going to be 100 square feet, but for the Bobcat to move around that new addition area, maybe have a stockpile right next to it, that's your temporary impact. So we're not charging you per se for that temporary stuff, but we at least want to see where it is, how close it is to the resource area, if it could be possibly changed to somewhere that could be cleaner and more appropriate. So with this new section, that's an easy ask for the applicant. It's a simple line that they show on the plan, and that's easy for the commission to scope out the total impact for the project from construction standpoint.
Can I make a comment on that?
Of course, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, this sort of reminds me of when we were at Beverly Airport, and I remember Peter hadn't had his knees fixed yet, and he was a tough walk. The fencing, we were discussing, well, yeah, the fence is going in a certain area, but we're not taking into, we're not considering the fact that there'll be bobcats or some kind of equipment that it's going to be in intruding even further in to get the work done. And this sort of addresses that, is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that also opens the conversation to say, okay, I see your limit of temporary impacts this. What's going to happen in this area? And then that opens the conversation for, well, we're going to have a bobcat come in, or maybe stockpiles will be left there. So it gives us opportunity to really get more detail on the impact.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Any other comments on that one? Okay, great. So the last one we had, and this we had a pretty substantial discussion on this one at the last meeting. We heard from the public as well. And I'm also going to have David speak to this too. So this requirement is for any delineation of a wetland. We're asking for the applicant to provide that information so we can then turn that into GPS points to use for our own data and have more up-to-date information on wetland areas. Hearing feedback from consultants, we heard that that could be financially binding on smaller projects, you know, single-family homeowners putting on smaller additions. So hearing that, Dave and I worked to find an alternative that still hits a trigger, but it's not as binding on those smaller guys. So the first requirement would be any abbreviated notice of resource area delineation application. That's a mouthful, but so any ANRAD, we'll call it, and that application in itself is a delineation. And usually if you are filing an ANRAD, it most likely is a pretty substantial delineation you are doing. And may or may not result in a pretty substantial project. So we had kind of agreed if you're filing an ANRAD, you likely have access to that higher survey equipment and access to probably a bigger survey in general. And asking of that would not be over and above the average requirement for an ANRAD. And then the second requirement the commission had suggested was offering a linear footage requirement. I have here square feet, that should be linear feet. So we want to have a threshold on the linear length of the wetland. So how long on the lot is the wetland and how much is being flagged. So I'll pass that off to David. So we had thrown out the number 300 based on calculations David had run. David, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. No, you almost you pretty much got it all. The only thing I was going to add was so the 300 linear feet was roughly more than double the distance of most delineations we've seen for Woodvale. So we tried to look at neighborhoods that we get a lot of filings for, and come up with a number that was, easily larger than most of what we see. There's another project I looked at that we did up on Wenham Street that had a very, very long stretch of stream bordering a very long stretch of their property line, and 300 feet was still longer than the distance for that project. So to George's point, single family homes adding a small garage or something like that will most likely not trigger this provision. However, also to George's point, if you do have to delineate something that large, it's likely that you're taking those measurements with the NAD 83 data anyway, so you can pass that along to us. So I think coming up with that trigger, we should be okay going forward for these types of delineations to get the data that we want to start mapping the areas of town that we would like to map. So if there's any questions.
I ask David a question, Peter?
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, David, is that similar to what other towns are doing, if you know?
Yes, in previous towns that I've worked, they required all data to come in this format. But Danvers gets a lot of filings, I'll say that, compared to other communities that I've been in.
Yeah, but I mean, the number you came up with, would that be consistent with what some of the other towns that you know of?
I can only really speak for the ones I've had direct experience with. And like I said, in those communities, they have to submit that data for every project. So there wouldn't be a distance trigger. It would just be required.
Yeah. Do we know what neighboring towns are doing? Or if they're addressing this?
I didn't check our surrounding communities.
Hold on, sorry. I thought I was on mute. Mike, I would say it's very similar to what David just said, that it's not a threshold trigger, it's a blanket requirement. And I think of the towns that do require it, like David had said, they most likely don't see the volume of single-family home projects we do, and their resource areas may be a bit different. For example, Woodville is a very channelized stream that's very close to homes. That's not a typical situation we see in other towns. So that for us, I think is a bit more, I think the threshold's specific to us, but I think it's an appropriate threshold.
Yeah, but so for a place like Woodville, we'll never get a, what did you call that format, the NAD 83?
That's correct. I mean, unless
We'll
it was
never get that because it will never be triggered.
it's highly unlikely that it would be triggered. I mean, but I would say in Woodville as well, you know, given that it is channelized, we could probably come up with a rough estimation that's good enough for where it is. It's really the other projects that are not defined wetlands that we have a hard time getting a handle on. I mean, as good as Georgia or anybody else that we have on staff are not necessarily wetland scientists. So it's nice to get that data definitively.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, thank you. Those were my questions.
Okay, just a quick follow-up comment that I'll make is that I think that's probably a good number, that because I'd like to see the single-family lot, you know, be excluded from this. But any kind of development that someone wants to put together, that we should be having these people provide that information for us. That's my 2 cents. Does anyone else have any comments on this one in particular? And then we'll just talk about the whole board in a second.
Peter, this is Ann. I'm happy to see that we have a definitive number, 300 square feet, which makes sense based on our history.
Linear feet.
Linear feet. Okay. Well, I did cross that square off there. I didn't put linear, but because of our history and the fact that we're surrounded by wetlands everywhere, I think it's really important that we especially pay attention to the small homeowners or home builders there. So I agree with that number.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Chelsea, any comments, questions?
No, I don't have anything.
How about you, Vanessa?
Nope, nothing additional.
Okay, since this is an open public hearing, we must ask for comments from the public. So I see Matt Duggan waving his hand. So Matt, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Matthew Duggan, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. So we first started discussing this at your last meeting, I believe, and I'm speaking specifically to Appendix B, sort of what you were just discussing. Mr. Spillane talked about a question about how nearby towns handle the linear definition of what a single family home would be required. So what about from the state level? Does Massachusetts EPA or DEP, do they have guidance under this type of topic?
Georgia or Dave?
Yeah, I can jump in and answer that, and then David can follow up. My instinct is to say no. So this requirement is something that not necessarily something the state would require. It's something the town requires for our advantage and data. So what we had mentioned at the last meeting, the applicant for that project specific, them giving us that information, it is beneficial to the project and of course the construction, but for us, it's more of a long-term benefit. So that requirement isn't something the state would really have a hold in. David, would you agree in that?
I do, and this might be slightly off topic, and as my wife, who's an attorney, will tell me, just answer the question. I'm gonna go off topic and say, you know, ultimately the long-term goal, I think, for us would be to map a lot of these sites so we know where the wetlands are more definitively than we do now. So we rely on the Oliver's hydrology and wetlands layer, which is from the state, which is at a state level, so it's pretty zoomed out. So it's not really reliable for local purposes necessarily. So what we'd like to do, and again, this is a little ways off, is, you know, somebody goes in to pull a building permit and our electronic permitting system would ping that person and say, hey, we have known wetlands either on or very near your site. You should probably see if you need to file with the Conservation Commission. Because right now it's essentially if somebody applies, we're hoping that they know that there's wetlands on the site and or somebody informs them of that, short of Georgia and I driving around to every open building permit in town. So anyway, that's the ultimate goal with the data. But again, George is correct about the DEP.
And then can you just clarify what the 300-foot threshold is? Below that, they don't need to capture these flag positions, or they can do it with a transit?
They'd still need to capture the positions, but you're exactly right. They'd use traditional survey data as opposed to something like a total station or something else that would be GPS triggered to get that data. We see, as you know from watching the meetings, we see a wide variety of who does the surveys, how they do them, and who's doing the flagging. So the larger companies probably have this equipment, which is who you'd hire to do a larger delineation. Some of the smaller companies do not. They'd have to subcontract it out, which would be another large added expense to the smaller projects.
Right. And they would have to subcontract it out because they don't know how to use the equipment, or they can't afford to purchase it?
It really could be for any number of combinations. I would say that probably it's due to the cost of the equipment. If they don't require it for other communities or Danvers in the past, they probably wouldn't have bought it, you know.
Right. And I think that I see when I did a search on this equipment that you can actually rent it for the day, and it seems reasonable, maybe $100 or $200 a day. So, you know, having transit information is something technology. Well, it's technology from like the Egyptians, I think, when they built the pyramids, right? So we're looking for technology for the future, right? And getting this information, I think, with using current technology, I think is a benefit to the town. The 300-foot threshold, I can't imagine a single family home that would have that type of lineage. It sounds more like a cluster development or a subdivision that would trigger that would exceed that 300 foot. So it seems excessive to me. Maybe, I don't know. I think looking at other towns or looking at other examples about how they do it, 300 sounds like that's a football field. So that's a long ways.
And we're not seeing how other towns do this. It seems to me like we're kind of on the leading edge.
Yeah,
Can I
think
ask a follow-up question when Mr. Duggan is done?
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I have right now. Hopefully, I'll have an opportunity to speak before you vote on this.
If it's as inexpensive as you say, Matt, I mean, I still think we ought to have our regulation going the way that we have it spelled out right now. But if it's easily done, maybe just at the time of application, we could encourage applicants to provide that information and just have them just for database building purposes, nothing else.
Right. And this equipment, is it like a camera that has a built-in GPS? Is that how it works? Like the camera takes a photo of the flag and then it captures its position?
It's a bit more complicated than that. It is more like a traditional survey. However, the equipment that they're using is capturing real time, most likely sub-meter or centimeter level GPS points and elevations at the same time. So it's pretty sophisticated, but you know, I'm willing to revisit either the number or the requirements. And again, the regulations can be updated, so that's kind of a good part about having them.
Yes.
Just one last comment. So it's important that the town knows the specific locations of the boundaries, the wetland boundaries. And I say that because we know that there's areas in town where the butters or the adjacent property owners have, you know, they've encroached into the wetlands, and you know, and we don't really know. about it until we kind of stumble across it. That's my perspective. So in the future, if we had these specific lines delineated and captured, we'd be able to use something like drone technology to actually, the drone would know where they would be able to see the specific lines and see if there was anything that looked out of the ordinary. So that's why I think this data is important, and we should do whatever we can for future commissions to be able to have this available to them.
Well, Matt, thank you for giving me the idea for a next capital request.
All right, I did have a question to follow up.
Go ahead, Mike.
Maybe a couple now. Well, Matt had, one of the things we hear is, oh, well, it's expensive, but nobody's really said how expensive it is, whether the costs can be distributed out. So if you're a representative and you have 10 or 20 clients and that cost is passed out, maybe it's not that expensive. The other thing is, what happens if the applicant's representative has the equipment? Are we going to say you don't have to do it because it's under the 300 feet and we're letting, you hear what I'm saying here, David? So they have the equipment, but because we've put a 300-foot threshold, he doesn't have to do it anyway.
Yeah, no, I absolutely hear you. I guess based on the last meeting, what we were trying to do was come up with something that would likely exempt the smaller projects from this simply technological requirement, not the
so
delineation.
Much based on expense then, but on other considerations.
What I was hearing was that it would be burdensome for the small projects, meaning monetarily. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, George.
I was going to say, so what we heard from Bill Manuel is that the smaller survey companies, so those I can't speak for the other smaller companies, but those one guy survey companies, having that equipment is costly. And if those towns aren't requiring it, the odds of them having it isn't likely. But to your question,
what's that cost, Georgia? What is the cost?
Bill,
I think you're at.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Georgia. You got it.
Bill had noted somewhere around $2,000, or there's something in the thousands of dollars.
So the electronic equipment itself, yeah, George is not wrong in that it's several $1,000s for the piece of equipment, but behind the scenes, you also need the software to run on your computer to actually get the data out of the machine and make it usable. That's generally a yearly cost. And I mean, we have some software in town that's pretty costly, but the total station CAD software can run into the tens of thousands per year.
But what I will say to Mike's point, that is, if we do get this situation in that we have a single family homeowner that's under that 300 square foot threshold, but they hire a survey company that has access to that equipment, it's no big ask to say, hey, Jim, do you mind throwing us that data while you're out there? And correct, David? I think that's something we had kind of talked about, that it's not a big ask if you do have it.
Correct. A larger company with more employees should have it.
Well, do they,
Thank you.
if a bigger company has the equipment, but do they charge the homeowner extra to use it?
I think generally they probably cost more to do the same work, which is probably, we see a lot of filings from smaller firms and smaller individuals.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Ann. Do they have to have a special certificate for this type of equipment?
That I don't know. I'm sure there's all kinds of trainings involved with it in terms of certification. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Has everyone had a chance? Chelsea, did you get a chance to ask any questions?
I didn't really have any.
Okay. Vanessa, are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just my take on the whole thing is, I think we ought to have something where we're trying to exempt the homeowner, and this number will do it. And it's not that big a thing. It's an asset. Our town staff is looking for numbers. You know, it's a regulation we can leave there for a year or two and see if we can come back to it if we need to change it. But I don't think we should be spending a great deal of time or effort on this beyond what we already have.
Well, couldn't we say, just one last point I want to make, couldn't we say that we may exempt those properties that have less than 300 linear feet and not lock ourselves into having to do it, but then on a case-by-case basis, we could do that?
I don't know, like I said, we're just getting, we're too finely tuning this issue.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, Peter.
I think, you know, let's just get this number, 300 linear feet, that's the threshold. You know, if you want to provide the information, we're happy to have it, but you don't feel compelled to provide it. And then the bigger projects where they can afford to provide this information, I think we should ask them to provide this information.
I agree with that perspective. That 300 can be changed if we need to. I don't want to add more bureaucracy to what we've got.
And you know that David and Georgia, we depend on you to come back to us if that number needs to be changed.
Sure.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board on this? Any other questions from the public? Okay, that being said, I think we can go ahead with closing the hearing.
Is this actually a public hearing?
Yes, it is.
Yes, yeah.
This is? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, then I'll move we close the public hearing.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor, Vanessa?
Yes.
Just nod, Vanessa. Vanessa.
I couldn't unmute fast enough. Yeah.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, so the hearing has been closed, and now Georgia has suggested, if you look in the memo, the verbiage we could use to make a motion to approve these regulation changes all at once.
I'll make the motion. And this is why I couldn't unmute, is because I was looking at the language for the motion. So I'll make the motion to amend sections 2, 3, 5, and Appendix B of the Danvers Wetlands Regulations as discussed.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor, Vanessa,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Michael.
Yeah, I'm going to trust staff's input on this and say yes.
Okay, before I cast my vote, we just have to make sure that the text for the square footage change is changed to linear.
Mhm.
And we're voting on it as being as 300, just stating the obvious, I guess. And Peter Wilson, yes. Okay, looking at the SharePoint today, I saw no new minutes posted, so we'll proceed to our next issue. And that's old or new business. And Georgia, you wanted to bring up the site visit date and time?
Mhm.
Yeah, so the site visit scheduled for Whipple Hill at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 14th. I'm hoping to change it to Monday, April 19th at 6 p.m. That works for Annie Rafferty with Moore and Cameron. And I was wondering if that works for the commission.
Okay.
I can do that. I don't know about the rest.
That works for me.
Great. And Vanessa is going to be sitting out on this one. Did I email you back? I don't know
How
if I
about
did.
Chelsea?
Did what?
Did I email you back, Vanessa?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. Okay.
Chelsea, does that work for you?
What was the time again?
6 p.m. I know that may be close for you.
Yeah, I might be a little late, but it should work for me.
Okay.
That's a holiday though, isn't it? Isn't that Patriots Day? So there should be less traffic, is the only point I'm trying to make.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
the 19th is a holiday.
Yeah, that's right.
With everyone?
George, does that have any impact on you with it being a municipal employee?
No, I'll be
Okay,
done.
and Monday the 19th works for me, so I guess we have a consensus.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
so-
Mhm.
Wear boots, wear boots and, yeah, it could be muddy. If it's
Georgia,
raining.
can you just send us a notice like next Friday, just a reminder?
I'll send a reminder of the parking area.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Good.
Any other old or new business we need to discuss?
No. Not that I
Okay,
know.
good enough. Good job tonight, guys. Someone make a motion to adjourn, please.
I make a motion that the Conservation Commission adjourns.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second,
All in favor? Vanessa,
yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
and Peter. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. So we'll see you all on the 19th.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.